Good morning and welcome, everybody. My name is Carly Schwartz, and I am the new editor-in-chief of the San Francisco Examiner and the Nob Hill Gazette. We are so pleased that you are joining us for our second annual Real Estate Roundtable, an event that will no doubt provide some great perspectives and insight on the market here in the Bay Area. Last year's event was themed Resilient Real Estate and shed some light on some surprisingly hot trends and record sales. And we're back today to see how things have held up this past year. Before we check in with our expert panel of realtors, I'd like to introduce you to this year's host, Janet Reilly, co-owner of the San Francisco Examiner and Nob Hill Gazette.
Well, Carly, thank you. Welcome. We'll start over. Really appreciate your being here and can't wait to continue to work with you in the future. We want to say welcome to our guests who tuned in today and to our distinguished all-star panelists this morning who are going to give us an insider's look at what's trending and what's topical in today's almost post-pandemic real estate market here in the Bay Area. And although we remain virtual today, again, this is our second year that we're having this panel. Next year, we'll all be together in person, and we can't wait to welcome you to our event then. We've allocated about 40 minutes for this moderated conversation, and then we're going to leave 10 to 15 minutes for some Q&A from our audience members. So to our audience, please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A window at any time during our conversation. That's not the chat function, but the designated Q&A window, and we'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible. And to our panelists, I know that you all love to talk, particularly about your passion for what you do, but I'm going to ask you to limit your answers to about a minute so we can touch on as many topics as possible. So let's get to it. It's my pleasure to introduce today's panelists. From Golden Gate Sotheby's, representing the Peninsula and Silicon Valley, please welcome Michael Dreyfus. Michael's career spans more than 30 years in residential real estate. He's regularly on the Wall Street Journal Real Trend list of America's top 250 agents and the Bay Area's top 10. His recent successes have included some of the highest sales in Palo Alto, Woodside, Portola Valley, and Atherton. Welcome, Michael. Helena Zaludova has joined us from Compass. Helena is ranked as one of San Francisco's top 10 agents and 150 agents nationwide by the Wall Street Journal. Helena's sales are approaching the $1 billion milestone. It's a lot of real estate. Her focus is on San Francisco's 7x7 square miles, and she's known for her attention to every minute detail in a transaction. Welcome, Helena. And who doesn't know Joel Goodrich? Joel reigns from Coldwell Banker Global Luxury. He is one of the Bay Area's most prominent luxury real estate agents with more than 25 plus years experience and over $1.1 billion in sales. He's listed some of the most expensive homes in America, including a number of high-profile celebrity estates, and many of the properties he represents have been featured in Architectural Digest and other design and lifestyle publications. Always good to see you, Joel. And next, I'm pleased to welcome Josh Deitch with Compass in Marin. For 13 years of real estate experience and dozens of successful and profitable personal real estate transactions in Southern Marin, Josh has developed a well-rounded sensibility of the Southern Marin market, especially when it comes to finding a pre-market and off-market properties. Welcome, Josh. And from DeLeon Realty on the Peninsula and Silicon Valley, I'd like to welcome Michael Repka. Michael is the CEO, managing broker, and general counsel, and the head of the DeLeon listing team. Prior to joining DeLeon Realty, he was a practicing real estate and estate planning attorney. Michael's knowledge and legal experience provides a level of understanding that is consistently beneficial to his clients. And we want to thank you for joining us today, Michael. Michelle Pender is with Engel and Völkers. Michelle is a native San Franciscan and knows her way around the hills and microclimates of San Francisco's neighborhoods, as well as the intricacies of our often complex real estate marketplace. Michelle stands out for her commitment to excellence, marketing expertise, and negotiating prowess. We want to welcome you, Michelle. And last, but certainly not least, is Neal Ward from Compass. For nearly 3 decades, Neal has been guiding clients on the buying and selling side of the Bay Area's finest homes. Neal was a founding member of Compass in San Francisco, and 3 years later, Compass is now the largest brokerage in the Bay Area. Neal has a deep knowledge of the marketplace and an unwillingness to compromise on quality. Welcome, Neal, and again, to all of you, we want to say thank you for being with us this morning. So let me begin with a question to Michael, Dreyfus, Helena, and Joel. You know, nothing in the last year has been predictable, not the stock market, the broken global supply chain, the work from home phenomenon, nor the real estate market. So can you give us a snapshot of the strength of the market today and where we are?
I feel that what the pandemic has really brought into focus is that having a home has never been more important. So I feel like the focus on your shelter and having a place in the world to call yours is just fueled the demand.
Jill, what I think has been really interesting in 2020, in the depths of the pandemic, we saw more $10 and $20 million sales in San Francisco than there were in 2019. And so far, 2021 is on pace to even break that record. So it's very interesting to see that. While we've had a huge exodus, I've had clients moving around the country and around the world in the last year. We've certainly had an influx, and our local buyers who are committed to the area are definitely in the buying mode.
Yeah, and on the Peninsula, we're seeing a lot of local strength. People that are here are buying more, buying bigger houses, buying more land. And we're seeing the locals that are outside of the prime areas start to move in, which is unusual for us. We usually have a very strong relocation market. And so it's interesting, or an international market about 3 or 4 years ago. So it's interesting to see it be very, very local and still be very, very strong.
Interesting. Well, Josh, Michael, Repka, and Michelle, what kind of buyers are you currently seeing entering the market? And has that profile changed in the last year?
We've definitely seen a change. I think as Joel said, the pandemic has made people rethink where they're living. They're looking for more space. They're looking for larger lots. We have had a considerable number of people moving out of the Bay Area, and they're actually looking for smaller places that are lower in maintenance. So essentially, the shuffling of homes has really created a lot of demand, in many different ways.
Josh?
In Southern Marin, we're seeing a lot of people, mainly in their mid-30s, generally in tech, who were probably had a longer time horizon of leaving San Francisco. And I think the pandemic really accelerated their thoughts about making the move over the bridge and experiencing more space, bigger houses, as everyone has said, and a bigger life experience, right? So they could stay home and experience their families and relatives and what have you. But yeah, a lot of young, healthy, successful tech I would say is the biggest category of buyers that I'm seeing aggressively come on over the bridge.
What about you, Michelle?
I'm seeing a lot of millennials, especially those who have done really well with cryptocurrency. And with the instability of cryptocurrency, people know that luxury real estate is really a sound investment, right? It's a smart investment. It's always going to be a great place to plant your money. So a lot of these millennials who've done really well are the ones who are entering the market and buying homes. And a lot of the first-time buyers are your kind of unconventional first-time buyers. These are folks that were sort of residential real estate, more in the stock market focus. But with some instability there and with cryptocurrency being kind of unknown, a lot of people are investing in residential luxury real estate because they know it's a surefire way to, have a safe investment.
Right. Most of our homes were forced to double over the last year as offices and classrooms and gyms, which may have led to new expectations when looking for a home. Are your clients expecting their homes to meet all of these needs? Or are you seeing streamlined, more traditional wish lists now that people are beginning to return, albeit pretty slowly, to their offices? And I'll direct that question to Neal, Joel, and Helena.
Go ahead, Joel.
No, please go ahead, Neal.
I feel that there's no question that buyers are looking to houses to fulfill many, many more needs than in the past. Gyms were a nice to have aspect, amenity, whereas now it is much more important. Home offices were almost a thing of the past and not needed. You took your laptop and sat on the sofa or at the kitchen table or counter, and that's where you did your work. Now people need a closed environment in order to conduct business throughout the day. So it's very critical.
Yeah, Janet, I'm a big believer in the future of the office. I think that we're going to see a huge comeback into the office. I was recently on a Zoom call where Stephen Schwartzman was speaking, the CEO of BlackRock, made a very interesting comment that, and he's the largest asset holder of real estate in the world, you can't build a company culture via Zoom. So all these new companies are starting, you look at every great tech company that was ever created, and it's usually 2 or 3 people together 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And also the whole theory behind cities and high rises, you live, work, and play within 15 minutes. So here in San Francisco, we have the biggest tech capital in the world, south of Market, closest 15 minutes away to the most beautiful parks and beaches in the world. So I do believe there'll be a big resurgence back into cities and into offices. At the same time, people are enjoying that flexibility of having that space at home.
Sure. Helena, what do you think?
I will add to that I agree with Neal that homes have to perform so much more than in the past. A big premium is now being put on the accessibility to outdoor space. So it's not just the demand for interior square footage, but just having a place to just get out and feel the grass and breathe fresh air has really put a premium, especially in San Francisco, on outdoor spaces that in the past were completely underutilized. So besides the gyms and besides the offices that buyers are looking for, it's the yards and the decks, et cetera, that now are driving buyer demand. And they're very much in focus, and a premium is being put on those. I'm also picking up a little bit of a desire to more definition to home functions. Kitchen, living, dining is still nice to be open, but being able to maybe slide the, pocket doors closed, etc., to gain some privacy while everybody's at home is definitely still flagging as a thing to look for. And lastly, I see a need for modern technology in the homes. So security, number one, and also fast internet connections, so satellite connections, etc.
We're demanding a lot from our homes these days.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the past year, people in the Bay Area have retreated to second homes. Or they've rented homes for extended periods of time due to the ability and sometimes the necessity to work remotely. Was it also a time for people that they're out to buy their first second home, either within or outside of the Bay Area? And if so, where are some of the places that people are looking to buy? And I'll ask that for Josh and Michael, Repka, and Michelle. What do you think?
Well, I think the clear leader for around here is probably the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe. Areas like Incline Village, Glenbrook. We're getting a number of people that are moving to Reno and some of the communities that are around that area, probably because of proximity and also because of the not having a state income tax. But we've seen a number of people moving to Scottsdale, Arizona, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Wyoming also has the benefit of not having an income tax. So there's a combination of a desire to have a little more space. Some elements of Zoom, I think, are going to stay with us for a long time. People that are getting close to retirement, they can still stay in contact with their coworkers and with their friends a little bit easier than they could have even 5 years ago. So we'll probably see people moving to those areas. For me, I have a second law degree in taxation, so I probably see a little bit more of this than I might otherwise. But the the drive seems to be having the primary home that's outside of this area and still keeping a smaller property in the Bay Area so they can come in for meetings, charity functions, board events, things like that.
Great. Josh, what do you think?
At first, during the pandemic, it seemed like everybody exodus and were buying second homes in Hawaii, and it's still happening. That a lot of families just took everybody and said, "Come on, and let's enjoy Hawaii during this time." But now I definitely see a huge amount of people wanting to acquire homes in Sonoma, Healdsburg, Napa, and enjoy the wine country, have their big pool and their big yard and their big farmhouse, and have big gatherings for their family and what have you. So I've definitely seen a lot more in North County with a lot of a lot of people bought houses 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now they're looking to buy their second home, including Tahoe and Reno, and for all those other reasons as well.
Well, we're so fortunate in the Bay Area that we really don't have to go far to get away, right?
Well,
we can go right
yeah,
across the bridge, and it's an entirely new environment, an entirely new climate, and just really feels like you're a real getaway. Michelle,
Yeah,
what are you seeing?
I'm seeing the same thing, Tahoe, Napa, Sonoma, even outside of, California, where families have planted their kids in different places and done, homeschooling and whatnot. Now that schools are opening, now that, businesses are opening up again, one of my friends, he's a realtor in Tahoe, and he said that he works with a lot of law firms, and these attorneys are being told they have to come back to the Bay Area or they're going to lose their jobs. And so they're kind of being required to move back to the city. So I think that's going to shift too. And their second homes, in Tahoe or Sonoma will remain their second homes. But I think we're going to see a lot more activity and mass exodus back into the city as the pandemic clears up.
So you sort of are of the belief that Joel is, that the commercial spaces might come back because people will be returning to home.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, according to the Zillow Home Value Index, every major Bay Area city has seen home values go up in the pandemic except one, and that one is San Francisco. So Joel and Neal, Helena, and Michael Dreyfus, let me ask you, is the exodus from San Francisco real? And if so, why? And do you think that this may be just temporary, as Joel and Michelle have sort of said, or do you think this phenomenon may be a little bit more lasting? So Joel,
Janet,
you want to start us off?
Oh, me, okay. Oh, Janet, I think you said Joel. Yeah, I think we have a couple of things going on. Last year, we saw record amounts of inventory. To take one submarket, let's say condos on Russian Hill, 2 to 6 million. Usually there's 3 or 4 available. At one point last year, there were 30, 10 times the normal inventory. That inventory is now back to normal. So that's a huge indicator. At the same time, let's take another submarket. Let's say home sales over 10 million. The average dollar per square foot in 2019 was about 2,300. Now it's about 2,000. So if you just take that one parameter, that hasn't quite gotten back to pre-pandemic levels, but we have a lot more sales. So I think things are definitely trending toward recovery, and both in terms of pricing and activity.
Great.
I
Neal, what do you
actually
think?
have a
I'm sorry. I was very concerned throughout 2020 as to what our market was going to be, if the higher net worth individuals were going to stay in the Bay Area. Many of them left for their second homes with their children and were completely distracted. And I was very uncertain as we move forward into 2021, what our market was going to be. That has changed dramatically. I feel like that I am in one of the most aggressive, strongest real estate markets that I've ever seen in my entire career.
Wow.
San Francisco is back, it's strong, and everything that made this incredible city beautiful is still here. Everything that made Silicon Valley is still there. there was a huge amount of money made last year, and it's being spent on people's homes here in the Bay Area, no question.
Helena?
Janet, my impression is that we're in the midst of one of the strongest rebounds across majority of the San Francisco market. That being District 5, Noe Valley, luxury home in Pacific Heights. We are setting new price per square foot records in the Marina. Also, there were a few pockets, like Joel mentioned, in the condo market in South. New construction in Soma is still a bit slow. High rises in Soma are definitely, one of the weaker spots, but single family homes, luxury homes in residential neighborhoods are seeing unprecedented demand. You asked about, people moving to different areas. I have had a personal experience with several of my high net worth clients moving to Florida. But I also have a handful of clients who have made an absolute unwavering commitment to stay in San Francisco, and they're investing and staying put. So I think whatever moves were made, they were made last year, and I think the commitment to San Francisco is here to stay.
Great. Michael Dreyfus?
So I see it from, the other side of, the normal ebb and flow of my clients to San Francisco or from San Francisco. And while I have not made as many referrals to the empty nesters to go back into the city as I had in the past, I think that's a matter of time. I don't see an extraordinary amount of families coming out of the city to our area. I see what we usually see, younger families with school-age kids sometimes make that decision. And I also, as a parent, have watched my kids move out of the city to buy homes somewhere else. And I think it just accelerated some of those decisions. But from what I'm hearing from other, like my colleagues in New York City are telling me what I think is going to happen in San Francisco. You live in a city for a reason. And there people are coming back and saying, I'm bored to tears, this place I went to. And I think that's what we're going to see is the city's going to, and they're already seeing it because they're on the ground, but I believe that too. It'll come charging back. That is the most beautiful city in the world, in my opinion. And I think it's going to do fine.
Nice to hear. You touched upon this a minute ago, but let's talk about the condo market. On the rise or a tough sell? And I'll ask Michael, Repka, and Neal and Josh. So Michael, you're on mute, Michael.
Sorry about that.
I know the feeling.
So we definitely saw the condo market being quite slow during the pandemic. I think people just naturally wanted to be further away. More recently, we've seen an improvement. We've had some condos and townhomes get multiple offers, and they start to seem like they're picking up some momentum again, but it's still a bit slower in my experience than the single family home market.
Neal?
I second that. It was really, really tough last year. High-rise elevator buildings suffered tremendously. And that has definitely opened up as we have moved forward into 2021. And seeing greater demand out there, a lot more buyers, things moving again in a very positive direction.
Josh?
Well, I don't sell any condos in San Francisco, what have you, but if I relate it to in Southern Marin, what's really gotten super, super hot is luxury homes, which there are not an abundance of because such limited land and all these houses were built in the 40s and 30s and 70s. And so whenever a luxury home is available in Southern Marin and it checks all the boxes, it's in extraordinary demand, especially with this buyer pool now with so much liquidity and success. They find the value of their home isn't just a business decision, it's a lifestyle decision. So there's my adapted answer to the condo.
You're very good at bridging, and I love that you are on the move. I assume you're going to check out a property.
Yep.
Well, most of us have changed the way that we've worked over the last year, and I know it's no different for real estate agents. Virtual open houses, closing deals remotely, Facebook Live. What aspects of doing business during the pandemic will you continue, and which will you happily give up when we're in a post-pandemic world? And I'll start with you, Michelle.
Yes, this was the year of having to adapt and learn how to become way more efficient, right? And I think with FaceTime and Zoom calls and virtual tours, we were a lot more efficient because we had to become that way. I think virtual tours, I mean, I don't think there's gonna be as much of a demand for them. However, videos are gonna be important, Matterports. Zoom is going to be super important because it's a really efficient way to communicate with your clients instead of having to come to your office and fight traffic, which is now a thing again, with things opening up. I actually helped a lovely couple. One lived in Chicago, the other was in Idaho, and I helped them find a place here in the city. And every appointment was a virtual, like the tour. And I had my FaceTime and explained the different attributes of the property. And they actually ended up purchasing a place, and they had never seen it until their final walkthrough. And so that was it was a really interesting experience. I think that element is going to go away, and I hope it goes away because you really cannot feel a property just by seeing it virtually. And I think that could set up a whole host of issues down the road. So I think I'll be happy to say goodbye to that one and have the clients actually walk through their property before they make their final purchase.
Michael Dreyfus, what do you think?
Well, a couple things. I mean, I think Zoom's here to stay. It's just too convenient and too economical to go away. Even I had a Zoom call yesterday with some clients in Palo Alto. We were no more than 3 miles apart. We could have met. We were all vaxxed. It just was easy, and it got the job done. And the ability to share things on the screen, I think, is sort of a game changer as well from a phone call. The other thing is, I think the stuff we've added on is going to stay as well. I think buyers are used to now seeing a lot more information, and it's a continuation of our business getting more and more expensive on the listing side. When I started, you had to do print and, in the Nob Hill Gazette and other newspapers, and then they added the web, and then there was digital pictures, and then there was video, and now we got 3D. And so it's not going to go backwards. We're getting this stuff layered on, and it's going to make listing homes more and more expensive in the future. And I think it's going to be an interesting challenge for our profession.
Helena, what about you?
I think the pandemic brought out some exciting developments in this field. I think the fluency that we are experiencing and adopting some of this technology, like conference calls on Zoom, it's just made us so much more productive. So I think that's here to stay. I think Michelle made a good point that we're not going to be driving, saving ourselves drives to meet clients when we can just talk face to face over, I'm in the car right now. I think what I'm not going to, the other thing I liked, or the thing that's working really well, is having buyers who are pre-approved. Really qualified buyers are the only ones who are seeing property right now. So that saves us a lot of time. It creates a lot of friction in the marketplace for agents who represent buyers because everything's by appointment. So I think some of this hybrid solution will stay. I think we will be a lot more, we will make property more easily available to see, but probably screen for a little bit more qualified purchasers, because some of these homes are, they should be only seen by qualified buyers. So I think some of that is here to stay, and that is something I cherish.
Yeah, it seems like it would be, these are tools that have added to our toolbox, which is, I'm sure, terrific, and again, for all of us, not just the real estate market, but others, and I don't know, I think that it's, I think that this face-to-face interaction, there really is something to it, being able to walk into a home and really get that feeling of the neighborhood, and just the bones of that place is incredibly important. But some of the transactional stuff, I'm sure, has been quite nice to be able to do it by Zoom, and other, digital means. We talked a little bit, and Joel, you brought this up at the very beginning about returning the future of offices in San Francisco and how that it will affect the residential housing market. Neal, what do you think? And what do you feel like? Is this really a changing market, or do you think that we're going to see some more normalcy soon too?
I feel definitely we're going to see more normalcy. People are back in San Francisco now. Everything, as I said earlier, that made our city is still here, and people want to go to great restaurants and to the opera and the symphony and be a part of the community. Their children are bringing them back to be with their friends. So I feel that we are definitely headed toward more normal times. But I also think with that, July and August, this city is going to empty out. Everybody is going to go on vacation this year, including probably most real estate agents if they can get away.
Well, just try to get a plane ticket right now to Hawaii. It's almost impossible, right? That is everyone's go-to place for a little R&R. Well, find a question for all of you. How does the 2020 decade look for the Bay Area housing market? Your crystal ball. Josh, why don't I start with you? He doesn't want to answer that question. Michael Dreyfus, 2020, you're bullish on this decade?
The decade? Wow, that's a big question. I think our housing scarcity continues, and the inability to provide listings for qualified buyers is going to get worse and worse, and is going to end up in a crisis. And I'm not sure how that crisis is going to come out. It could come out in the proposals of zoning laws being completely revamped, but I don't see any way, given the forwardness of the employment market and the money being made in this area and the lack of the ability to build houses, that it doesn't somehow end badly, which means real estate continues to go up in value.
Yeah, we're just not building, like we should. And I think there was just an article that I saw in the paper about a week ago saying fewer permits were pulled in the last year, like in the last decade. Of course, that has to do with the pandemic as well, but just building is so tough. Michael, Repka, what do you think?
Well, I think there's no doubt that this is an incredible place to live. The economic environment, the weather, the culture, everything's a big draw. I'm a little more pessimistic than I think some people on the panel. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. It has gotten incredibly expensive to live here. Unless you have radical changes to zoning, you're going to see continued increases in prices. But there's going to be a point where kind of a breaking point, as businesses start to see it being more and more expensive to bring people in. There'll be a desire to relocate offices. So it'll be fascinating to see over the next 2 or 3 years, something even as short as that, how businesses realign themselves after the pandemic. Are we going to see continued shifts? The other markets outside of this area are even hotter than we are, places that are a little bit more affordable, that also enjoy nice climates and good culture, all those other attributes that we've grown so used to. So it'll be interesting to see, are we going to go back to normal and all the businesses are going to start to continue to hire here, or are they going to expand facilities that are located in Texas and Arizona and Nevada and elsewhere? So and some of that, again, I mentioned you have a bit of a bias on this, but I think some of that's going to also relate to taxes. If California continues to increase taxes on businesses and on individuals, and there are arguments on both sides of that question, but they will exacerbate the problem. And so we'll have to see how that all unfolds.
Joel, what do you think?
Well, that's an interesting question, Janet. I think to look at the whole decade, you kind of need to look at what are the mega trends. And interesting, I was asked to give a talk in 2019 to one of the financial institutions and then by other organizations about the future of San Francisco real estate. So the talk was called 9 Mega Trends, the Future of San Francisco. So I kind of like to focus on the 9th mega trend. It was based on an article I read, which was, I think, one of the more interesting articles of the last decade by Peter Diamandis, who's the leading tech forecaster, founder of Singularity University and the X Prize. So his article was called The Convergence of 8 Technologies. The whole gist of the article was in past decades, there's one technology driving innovation and therefore the economy and real estate. In the 60s, it was the mainframe. In the 70s, it was the chip. In the 80s, it was personal computer. 90s, the internet. 2000 decade, smartphone and search. But he's saying in this past decade, artificial intelligence is converging with 8 other technologies to create what he feels in the future is going to be even more exponential innovation. So what does that mean for San Francisco real estate? Well, I think that means that San Francisco and Silicon Valley are incredibly well positioned to be at the front of this movement, and that the latter part of this decade could possibly be the biggest boom that we've seen.
Oh, interesting.
Now that could be derailed by, as Michael mentioned, the cross currents of geopolitical events and taxation and regulatory environments. I think the mega trend is very favorable for our city in Silicon Valley.
Great. Helena, what do you think?
I think the one topic that we haven't touched on is the rising building costs.
Yeah.
It's happening in real time, and it's here. It's here to stay. It's inflationary, and combined with restrictive zoning and rising building costs, that's going to constrict some of the supply. So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how that's going to play out in the future, but I work with several very well-known developers, and the new project starts are lagging. So that means 2 to 3 years from now, inventory of new turnkey homes is going to be a lot thinner than it was over the past couple of years.
Michelle.
To echo Helena, I have a couple of developer clients as well who are tired of San Francisco. Things are taking too long through the city, and they're looking at other markets to build, beautiful homes. So there certainly is that element, and looking forward in a few years, there will be a lack of inventory, right, in the luxury market. However, I feel like the luxury market is here to stay. San Francisco is an exceptional city with beautiful culture, and you could do 1,000 different things every weekend and never repeat what you do. Go to the mountains, go boating. I mean, there's so many things you can do here. So I think that being said, despite all of this, economic forecasting and what's going to happen with technology and this and that, I think there's always going to be a population of people who absolutely want to be in this gorgeous city because it's San Francisco.
Joel.
Yes. Well, I think I spoke earlier, but
I meant Josh. Oh. Too many J's. I just like what you said so much, Joel. I had to come back to you, but Josh.
Well, I think that there's a big piece with this whole idea of cost of new construction. I mean, I used to develop some really high-end houses in Marin, and I mean, you could, virtually give me a piece of land to build on, and I probably won't do it because the cost of construction, the time it takes, and the hoops you have to jump through are enormous. Therefore, I think we're going to see a continued high level of demand for high level houses that are in, have great qualities and what have you. I think the liquidity that's out there right now seems to me to be real. It's not just like it was a few years ago where it's on paper and that one day their options are going to vest and one day they're going to be wealthy. It just seems like there's a lot of very wealthy liquid people out there in all ages and price ranges. And it's pushing all sorts of different levels of unpredictability in the market. You could see a house go on the market for $1,995 and trade upwards of almost $3 million. And so it's really hot. And where is it going? It's hard to predict, but I just think that regardless of market environment, a political environment, there's just so much demand and so much real liquidity out there that I think it stays healthy, not to say it can't get hurt.
Yeah. And for the last word, Neal.
I'm bullish. Here in San Francisco, we have a teeny tiny piece of geography on the north side or south side, single family homes, and there's virtually no more land. We have fixed supply. And just as Josh related to, tremendous amount of liquidity, tremendous amount of wealth out there, and which creates demand for a fixed supply that has not left the way it seemed that it had. So I'm bullish.
Great. Well, we have some great questions coming in that I can see in the chat from our audience. So I thank you for that moderated conversation. And now let me go to some of the questions that we have. The first one is, how has the passage of Prop 19 affected the market? Do you see more homes coming on the market as a result?
I'll jump on that because I think it's more than the ability to carry your property taxes. The proposals that are on the table right now include getting rid of the stepped-up basis, include a raise in capital gains with $1 million exclusion, includes possibly getting rid of the 1031 exchange. All these things that have stopped people from selling their houses. I won't sell my house because I can get a stepped-up basis for my family when I die. I won't sell my house because I don't want to increase property taxes, which now you can carry your lower ones even if you buy up. I won't sell my house because I don't want to pay capital gains, but now I got $1.5 million exclusion. I think if that stuff all comes through in conjunction with that, we're going to see a lot of inventory from a lot of older clients that have been holding on to properties for a long time. And then I think also in the multi-tenant market, we'll see a whole lot go on to avoid, the rise in capital gains and losing the 1031 exchange. So there's a lot of regulation to keep your eyes on in terms of inventory.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. We've already started to see it. I've been getting a lot of phone calls from people that want to sell ahead of the increase of the capital gains tax. There's certainly the possibility of a dramatic increase in inventory if some of these things go through. It'll be, I get a lot of questions about whether the tax changes will be retroactive at the beginning of the year, will they start next year? I feel pretty confident that neither of those will be the case. I think that there'll be an effective date that's concurrent with the announcement of the legislation. So that'll be quite interesting. As an industry, we're going to see a lot of new products or existing products like installment sales that will probably become much more popular. And they'll need to be structured appropriately because as Michael mentioned, the proposal as it's currently laid out is to increase the capital gains tax rate from 20% to 39.6%, a dramatic increase. But that will apply to adjusted gross incomes above $1 million, which includes both which will most likely or certainly include the ordinary income that people have, other capital gains that they have, and then the gain of their house. So we'll probably
may have lost Michael momentarily. Anybody else want to comment? Another viewer says, we've lost so many people through the pandemic. Has there been a greater number of residential probate properties being seen in Bay Area real estate? Interesting question.
I don't think we've really seen any increase in San Francisco. Of course, San Francisco was incredibly well run in terms of reacting to the pandemic. We were the first city to shut down. And you walk around the streets, everyone's still wearing masks. So I think San Francisco has been amazing in terms of being one of the safest metropolitan areas in the world. So no, I don't think it has really affected the number of probate sales in the city, at least.
Yeah, probably not in this part of the world or in the Bay Area. Anybody else? Another question. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on rising interest rates expected in mid-2022 under the Biden administration? It will definitely be a buyer's market at that point.
I think it's going to affect different price points in the market. When you're a first-time buyer and you're trying to buy something for $1.2 million or $1.4 million, and you're and you qualify for $800,000 loan or $1 million loan, and all of a sudden rates go up, that chemistry is going to change quite a bit for their affordability factors. And it's going to be interesting how that integrates into the market too. Whereas, the person who's buying the $5 million home or $10 million home may be taking out financing just for strategic tax purposes, but they're not relying on the tax rate, or the interest rates of their mortgage. So I think it's going to affect different segments of the market quite a bit.
As someone who had a 13% interest rate on my first house, we got a long way to go. And I think there are studies that say that actually at this low rate, rising interest rates do not depress housing demand. And I think I've read something that says as much as 8% before you start to feel really a lot of pressure on buying, which is incredible for us to think about. When have we seen 8%? So it's so low. It's just so low. I think it has to go quite a bit before people stop buying. And initially they'll buy into rising interest rates.
Do you feel employees will move to less expensive areas, more affordable states, and just work remotely? Do you see that as a current and upcoming trend? So we've talked a lot about people coming back, but do you think there is a certain segment of the population that this hybrid work or remote work is here to stay, and they're just saying, I'm going to leave the problems of San Francisco and the Bay Area behind?
Well, Janet, I think we've seen a little bit of that, but what's so interesting is that the average rent, for example, on a one-bedroom apartment in the city used to be $3,400 a month. Now it's $2,100. So a lot of the 20-somethings are looking at us and saying, wow, we can live in San Francisco, the magical city by the bay, for $2,000 a month rather than $3,500 a month. Let's do it. So I'm actually hearing reports from some of our rental agents that they're seeing a little bit of a movement back by some younger people. That being said, a lot of people who'd like a big home with yards say, sure, we now have that option. So it'll be a hybrid mix, somewhat of a flex, but I don't think we have any danger of San Francisco emptying out at this point.
Yeah, and on
like
the peninsula,
said, it is limited by supply and space.
Yeah, and I was going to say on the peninsula, the FANGs aren't going away. I mean, they're doing the exact opposite. I mean, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, they're just growing dramatically. And actually, they were planning on this sort of a business before COVID. I mean, Google realized that they could not get enough engineers here, and they needed to go and have a workforce that was remote. And they're all growing. So I think we got to remember, I talked to a Google engineer who manages a team yesterday, and she said her 13-person team has to go double to 26. And she's like, how am I going to do that? Where are they going to come from? So there's tremendous growth that's going on that's going to soften what's going to be a continuing trend of the remote working.
Great. This next question says, this more pertains to the lower price point homes. How do the panelists feel about the return of open houses? And most importantly, how often and what times should they be? Both weekend days, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., or the old times of 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.? Michelle, what do you think?
This has definitely been a big topic among the real estate community, and a lot of us love the earlier open houses, the 10 to 12 or 9 to 11, because you can go see properties and then take your kids to the park and carry on, right? And get your day started. Other people like the traditional 2 to 4s, and they say that on Sunday is church day, and so a lot of people want to go to church first and then go to open houses. I think a balance would be great. Maybe Saturdays 10 to 12, Sundays 2 to 4. I am overjoyed that open houses are coming back. I love them. I love connecting with the neighbors. I love connecting with, just the lookies, because you can meet amazing people along the way and also showcase your house to all the interested buyers. And I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I think Michelle made an interesting point earlier that, or Helena also, that we've been so efficient in terms of our only showings have been virtual, or the only live showings have been to pre-approved buyers by appointment. The nice thing about open houses is I think it helps engage first-time buyers. They can go to a property without feeling they have to make an appointment or take anyone's time, but they can just do it. And I think it helps engage new buyers in the marketplace. So I think it's healthy. In the high end, there's obviously very few of them, but I think across a broad spectrum of price ranges, it's healthy for the market.
Another audience member says, I own a 1-bed, 1-bath in a full-service building on Nob Hill. I want to sell. When do you see that market coming back, if at all? We might have stumped our panelists.
No,
Helena?
the entry level market is very active. I think the only time to sell is when the time is right for you. I mean, it's very, we're in a rising market. Entry level homes are very, very active. So if the timing is right for you, then this would be a pretty good time.
I think also a trend we've seen in the last few years, Janet, is the condos and cooperatives with the high dues. It's gotten harder because the interest rates are so low. People say instead of spending $2,000 a month in dues, I spend $1,000. I can use that $1,000 to buy $500,000 more worth of property. So that has been a bit of a trend with some of the higher price condominiums and condos in the lower price ranges. In the upper price ranges, it doesn't apply as much, but that has been a bit of a shift in the market. But yeah, the Nob Hill market is definitely becoming more active, a lot less inventory and more sales than last year. So it's gradually improving, not as quickly as the single family homes. I would say over the next 2 to 3 years could be a good time.
Another audience member writes, the buying seems to be outpacing the selling, hence low inventory, demonstrating high demand for living in San Francisco, which we've been talking about. Why do you think the news is covering only one part of the story? People are moving out, because that is a lot about what we read.
Well, I think we are seeing a lot of people moving out. In last year alone, I have people moving to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, Lake Tahoe, Nashville, Palm Beach, Newport, Rhode Island, Miami, Connecticut, and Switzerland in 1 year. I've never seen anything like it. But at the same time, our people here who are committed to staying in the Bay Area are staying. And we're actually starting to see some national influx. We've seen clients from New York, Los Angeles, Canada, a couple of European clients that may have already been based here. So it is a big story. We've never seen this kind of outflux. But at the same time, it's obviously the demand is here. So the influx and the new wealth creation, as Neal mentioned, is I think more than compensating for that.
I also think we're going to see a trend of people who did move to Hawaii and Jackson and all these great, amazing places, and they're going to be a year or 2 years in and just miss this wonderful, magical place we live in. The climate, the energy, the people, the culture, everything. And so I think these people, they'll have the luxury to be like, you know what, I miss home again. I'm coming back. So I think we're going to see a trend of people coming back and saying, you know what, Austin's really cool and fun and hip, but I can't stand the humidity or I can't stand the flies and what have you. And they're going to come back to their home, I think is
kind of nice to visit, but wouldn't want to live there kind of thing. I agree. I mean, like we said, there's no place like the Bay Area. So final question, not a real estate question, but I have to ask it because I love it. It's from a viewer that says, Neal Ward, I love the painting, the abstract painting behind you. Who's the artist?
Was done by a friend of mine, the best kind of painting to get. So thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank all of you so much for your insight, for your time, for reminding us of what a beautiful area that we live in. And we are so blessed, and just hope that you will come back and join us next year as well. And like I said, I believe that we'll be doing this in person. All of us from the Nob Hill Gazette, from the San Francisco Examiner, wish you a great day and be safe out there and healthy, and sell a lot of homes. And thanks so much. And thanks to our viewers for tuning in for us. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.